Hellclock is a roguelike ARPG where you fight your way through hell in the aftermath of a war of Canudos. Within a run, you progress by killing enemies, leveling up, and collecting blessings. Outside of a run, you combine blessed gear and craftable relics with two passive trees to make a build able to clear waves of enemies or challenge the game's bosses. Hint, when it comes to buildcraft, I find builds are always better when you add explosions. And so, in today's video, I'm going to take you through the early game of Hellclock so you can get started on your own journey. Speaking of, you start before you begin the game, specifically by selecting the game mode and difficulty options. Initially, you can only select Campaign, but later you'll be able to make a separate save file and experience the roguelike endgame of Ascension. On the other hand, if you do select Campaign, you'll be playing through Hellclock's story, including both Abyss and Oblivion. But for now, you can only select Campaign, so on to the next choice. This is where you choose the death toll and difficulty. Now, Hardcore, death toll, should be pretty self-explanatory. And I'll assume everyone watching this video is probably choosing Softcore, and if you're not, you already know what you're getting into. Because yes, if you die in Hardcore, your character's gone and you have to restart. For difficulty, there is Regular and Veteran. Now, if you've played a lot of Path of Exile, Diablo, you've got PoB loaded up right now, then you're probably going to enjoy Veteran difficulty. Yes, it's more challenging, but there are plenty of tools to help you progress, and you can use Vengeance mode if you ever get stuck. Regular, on the other hand, is intended more for players who don't want to dive into the stats and do a ton of theory crafting. They just want to play the game and blast. In short, you'll find this to be a little bit on the easier side. List up there are the options. Relaxed mode removes the timer. My recommendation here is start with relaxed mode off. But if you play for a bit, you don't find it fun with the hell clock constantly ticking down, you can always turn this off in the menu. Allow pause does exactly what it says on the box, probably leave it on. Vengeance mode gives you a stacking buff each time you're defeated. And this is a great middle ground between regular and veteran difficulties, where you can progress on veteran until you get stuck, then use Vengeance to push through. And so with all of your options selected, it's time to dive into the game and start your first run. Hellclock starts by dropping you right into the action as you enter the basement. You're immediately confronted with some corpses which you have to kill, or they will kill you. In addition, top left, you might notice something is ticking down. This is the titular Hell Clock. After you kill a few of these zombies, you level up, gaining a Blessing of Proficiency. Now, these work very similar to boons in Hades, or anything similar to that you might be familiar with from another action RPG roguelike. However, there are a couple of key differences. The first is you are limited to a certain number based on the rarity. 4 common, 3 magic, 2 rare, and 1 epic. The second thing is, each skill has both an active and a passive portion. So for split shot, the active portion is being able to shoot for projectiles and kill enemies. The passive portion is the global buff for plus a certain % of crit damage based on its rank. Now, something else that's a little different about Hellclock is each skill, in addition to their effect, has a global buff. The higher the skill's rank, which as a note is different from level, you'll see here it is a level 1 split shot that is at rank 0, and I get 2% crit damage per rank. How do you increase rank? By selecting Blessing of Proficiency. So if I were to take Quick Trigger, I would gain 8% skill speed, which is basically attack speed, kind of sort of, and 2% crit damage. On the other hand, the Magic Blessing gives crit chance, very good way to increase your damage, and 4% because it increases the skill by 2 ranks since it's magic. Rare is 3 ranks, and epic is 4 ranks. So in general, if none of the options on offer are particularly valuable to you, you could either redraw it if you have the gold, or pass on it if you don't, for example, want to use up your 1 epic blessing slot on something not particularly valuable. Or if it's not super onerous, just take the highest rarity to get the most effect from the passive global buff. So for now, I'm just going to go through here, kill some more zombies, open a chest, and you'll notice I'm getting a bunch of things called trinkets. These are another progression system in Hellclock. By progression system, I mean they only apply within a run. So coming over here, these are all the trinkets. Right now I have a Trinket of Power 1, which is a rare tier 1 trinket that gives me 12% damage. If I were to get any trinket that has more than 12% damage, it would automatically replace this trinket because these are passive effects that you collect as you go through the run. Trinket of Fury gives crit damage. Trinket of Mobility gives movement speed. Trinket of Aptitude gives cooldown speed. Trinket of Swiftness gives attack speed. They are divided up into Fury, think of this as damage, Vigor, defense, Agility, more about movement and speed, and Spirit, which is mana stuff. Think of this as a passive power gain that you just collect as you play through. You don't really think about them or interact with them, minus maybe sometimes walking over a trinket on the ground so that you don't miss it. Now I've leveled up again, and here I'm going to take Efficient Reload, lowering the mana cost so that I can use my skill more. This is a Shrine. Now, Shrines give you a temporary buff. The Shrine of Aptitude gives you the Shrine of Cadency buff for 30 seconds, reducing your cooldown speed, or reducing your cooldowns by 200%. So, normally, it would be a fairly long cooldown to instantly regenerate all my knives. Now, it's basically instant. I wouldn't go super far out of my way for either a shrine or a chest, but if it's along the path I'm already going to take, they're usually well worth opening because chests contain gold, trinkets, and crafting materials, and shrines give you buffs, which helps you kill stuff faster. Now, when you first reach floor 3, you encounter the first survival wave, where you have to fight for survival against a horde of enemies. This horde of enemies is going to have 3 waves, and yes, there are often rare foes mixed in. At the end of the 3 waves, you face off against a mini-boss like the Jailer. These can be quite dangerous, though the Jailer himself is pretty simple and designed to be an introductory fight. He summons some adds, fires projectiles that are quite dangerous if you're close but not that bad from a distance, and shoots those lobs at you when he teleports around. See how my health dropped a lot there? That's because I stood close to him and was immediately shotgunned by all of his projectiles. Whereas if I stand back here when he uses the same skill, like so, I can just easily avoid it. In other words, distance on bosses is quite important, and you have to be careful.
I was already thinking those devils would not yield. I pray that a body returns.
After defeating the Jailer, you gain access to your first Blessing of Foundation. This is somewhat similar to Blessing of Proficiency from leveling up, but these are all buffs for Paeyu, your character, meaning they affect all of your skills. There's a second difference here, which is each of these Blessings of Foundation are fully deterministic. So instead of getting random blessings of random rarity, it offers 3 random options, but the rarity depends on your choices. So initially, every Blessing of Foundation offered will always be common, and it costs 600 gold to purchase a common blessing. It'll cost 1,200 to purchase a magic blessing. If I buy Blessing of Force 1 for fire damage, lightning damage, and plague damage, I will add to the pool Blessing of Force 2, which then lets me choose 3 different options: damage for area of effect skills, ailment duration, and another fire, lightning, and plague damage. If I select that, the things I don't pick, so let's say I select fire, lightning, plague, area damage and ailment duration are removed from the pool and their entire progression lines are gone. But I will gain new progression lines based on the thing that I did choose. Upon reaching floor 7, you face off against the game's first boss, the Merchant. This guy is definitely a step up from anything you've fought before. In addition to having a little bit more of a defined moveset, he has a new mechanic, Curse. Every time you get hit, not only do you take damage, you gain curse stacks, reducing your physical and elemental resistances. And yes, it can put them into the negatives. This makes you increasingly vulnerable to damage as you make mistakes over the course of a fight. The intent here is that one mistake is not going to kill you, but repeated mistakes lead to attrition and thus a death. With that said, most bosses do summon adds so that you have a chance to recover your potions. Just keep in mind that that res debuff from Curse is always going to continue stacking, and the only way to fix that is to kill the boss. Now, after defeating a boss, you're offered a Blessing of Legacy. This is a unique relic, usually with a skill transformative effect, that will be available for your next run. So in this case, the Spearhead causes Split Shot to pierce additional enemies and gain more damage as it pierces, great for killing the guys in the back. Blunderbuss converts Split Shot from a cone of multiple projectiles into a single powerful slug that deals even more damage and has a little bit of pierce to make up for the lack of AoE. Meanwhile, Molten Relic interacts with the repeater skill, converting its damage to fire and letting it launch grenades that add additional fiery explosions to your build. After selecting this, you will not be able to use it in the current run. You have to wait until you either die, run out of time, or of course, defeat the Floor 21 boss and start a new one. After defeating the Merchant, you continue on to Floor 8 and thus continue your journey into Hell. In Act 1, floors 3, 10, and 17 are survival waves, whereas floors 7, 14, and 21 are boss fights. As you progress deeper, not only do the enemies change, but things generally get more dangerous. Higher health pools, and in some cases, more complex mechanics. So proceed with caution, and remember, as you level up, you get stronger as well. Next up, let's talk about meta-progression systems. Hellclock has quite a few of these. Now, gear isn't exclusively meta-progression. You can also find the items within your run. But between runs, you have access to the Blessed Corner, which sells a variety of items, some of which may be upgrades and some of which may not. This is one of the ways you can spend your soul stones. And if you have any gear that you want to hold on to but aren't actively using, just toss it in your Blessed Gear stash. This is done automatically if you equip a new item, or you're given the option to either send it to stash or recycle it for more soul stones when you're acquiring something during your run. The next meta progression system is the Great Bell, unlocked after you defeat the Merchant. This is a passive tree. In some cases, it offers stat bonuses, such as Soulstone gain. More Soulstone gain functions as more experience on the Great Bell and more progression in general, making it quite good. But there are also direct power increases and new mechanics, like red portals that let you skip previously cleared floors when they spawn, and more time on the Hell Clock so you can push deeper or at the very least spend longer pushing. In addition, you have things like Reliquary Size Upgrade, which allows you to equip more relics, maximum skill level, vastly increasing your power because skill levels are one of the main ways to scale damage, and Second Wind, which is effectively a cheat death effect. Now, as you progress and fill out the Great Bell, more options open up to you. Initially, only this center branch will be available. However, once you complete Act 1, the left branch opens up, offering you new options such as +1 skill blessing at the start of a new run. In other words, +1 level. After you clear Act 2 and reach Act 3, this branch opens up, offering you more reliquary size and of course more skill levels. So, whenever you've beaten a run, head back to the Great Bell, check what upgrades are available. Since the Great Bell gains more effects as you collect soul stones, doing things like disenchanting unwanted gear and recycling unwanted relics is a way to increase your Great Bell progression as well that you should absolutely take advantage of in the early game. Now, relics are permanent power added to your character. You can equip up to 3 different loadouts and swap between them when you're between a run. They come in different sizes, like Grand Relics that take up 4 slots this way, or Exalted Relics that are these fun little squares. Small relics take up 1 spot, and large relics take up 2 spots. Relics also have different rarities, with these small relics being common, they only have 1 stat, whereas this small relic has an additional effect which applies to the skill Double Knives. Many of these additional effects are damage multipliers, so it's well worth looking out for. Next up, you have unique relics. These are, well, unique effects, and they transform your skills, such as Blunderbuss that turns Split Shot from a cone to a single shot, or Spearhead, which gives Split Shot additional damage as it pierces enemies. These two synergize really well. On the other hand, something like Death Notary turns your slow time from a primarily defensive bonus, preventing enemies from reaching you by slowing them down, into an offensive bonus because now they take 30% more damage when they're within the slow time. Another use of your soul stones is to level up your relics. This increases the base stats and also scales part of a unique effect. In the case of Death Notary, it reduces the reduction on your slow time duration, whereas on something like Blunderbuss, it significantly boosts the damage. Now, one way to fix your resistances is hope you get relics that drop. For example, in my last run, I got a Lightning and Fire Res relic, which improves my elemental resistances significantly. Still doesn't fix Fizz though, and what if I want something a little more specific? That's where crafting comes in. Crafting is done using the various tools and tool fragments that drop throughout your run. So in this example, I'm going to try to craft a grand relic with Fizzres. The first step is to use Tool of Tinkering to reroll the affixes. Right now, I could reroll the lightning damage into a different prefix, the fire or lightning res into a different suffix, like experience gain, or plague resistance, or life on kill, or physical damage. Okay, that's something I actually want since I'm playing a build that deals physical damage. So now I'm using a tool of locksmithing. This locks one random affix. And as you can see, if you reapply it, it locks a different affix. So now I have the fizz damage is locked. I can't change it out with any of the other tools. So I'm just going to go back to using this. All right, plague res, life, that's pretty good. Mana regen, life again, max conviction doesn't really help, experience. In this case, I did not roll fizz res. But let's just, for the sake of demonstration, pretend that I had, or maybe I just really want max conviction and experience gain. The next step would be to use a tool of enhancement. What do you know? Got fizz res, so I did roll it. Followed by a greater tool of enhancement. The tool of enhancement adds two affixes, which in this case was a prefix and a suffix. Greater enhancement turns it rare, adding a special new mod, which in this case is skill projectile amount. So now I've crafted myself a significant upgrade. I'm going to put it on. As you can see from my character sheet, my fire res might not be quite as hot as it was before, but that fizz res is looking, well, okay, completely deplorable, but we're going to pretend it looks better because it makes me feel better about the resources invested. As you play, you get more materials and you craft more relics. Now, once you have a relic that you've crafted up and you're happy with, you can go on to enhance it. And to demonstrate that, I'm going to use these imbued tools down here. Imbued tools add a special implicit modifier based on the devotion path associated with the tool. So this is discipline, think marksman, evasion, speed. On the other hand, this is a faith tool. So, lightning, minion, spells. Not really going to be doing anything for me. It's just a good example. And here's a tool of fury. Think fire, physical, melee. Since this is a fizz build, imbued tool of fury is actually quite good, but there are several affixes in the pool, so you don't always get what you want on the first try. In addition, there's also corrupted tool and divine tool. Divine tool improves all of the values by a margin that can go beyond their maximum. And a corrupted tool works very similarly to corruption from Path of Exile, randomly changing your items, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. The best case scenario, it adds a powerful new corrupted implicit. The worst case scenario, it takes an affix you really want on the item, like the fizz res, and turns it into something you don't want. The corrupted tool, therefore, has the possibility of completely destroying an item that you spent some time crafting on. So use them with caution and make sure you have some spares in your stash. You don't get a ton of crafting materials as you progress through the campaign, but once you reach Abyss and Oblivion, they do become more plentiful. Next up, skills. On your very first run, these are the starting skills you'll have. These are the skills that you can purchase for 1/100 soul stones each throughout your Act 1 experience. After you beat the boss of Act 1, you also gain Bombardment and all of the Act 2 skills, minus this one, which is unlocked by clearing the Act 2 boss. Whenever you unlock a new skill, you will need to purchase it for 100 soul stones. But luckily, this is a one-time thing, so it won't take very long until you have them all. After you get the option on the Great Bell to raise skill levels, you can also raise and lower skill levels at your leisure anytime within the skill book, which is handy because quite often you'll want to raise a skills level when you're using it for damage. But sometimes you might want to keep it at a lower level. For example, on Split Shot, I pretty much always want to raise it. It's my main damage on this build, so it's really good to have. What about something like Shadow Dash? I'm not really using this for damage. Primarily, it's a movement skill. And at level 1, it has a cooldown of 3 seconds. But at level 2, it has a cooldown of 3.75 seconds. Yes, it does more damage, but the cooldown's lower, meaning I don't have as much mobility. In which case, it's probably better for me to keep Shadow Dash at level 1. And there are several other examples of this, situations where you might want to keep a skill at a lower level. But in general, if you're using it for damage, higher is better. As you progress through Act 2, you also unlock the Constellation system, which if you've played Grim Dawn, this does work very similarly. You begin by selecting a devotion path, Fury, which is about fire, physical, and life, Discipline, which is about crit, movement, agility, range, and Faith, which is about lightning, spells, and minions. Since I'm currently playing Split Shot, I'm going to go with Discipline, though there's a lot of nodes in Fury which would fit as well. Your Devotion unlocks new constellations, and as you put points in those, that unlocks more devotion. In this case, I now have 1 Fury for Discipline, so I've unlocked the first Fury constellation, and some fun additional Discipline ones, including Oxosi, who's going to be very good in the near future. And by that I mean he is the premier constellation if you're using marksman skills, thanks to a node up top, which as soon as the game stops showing me constellations, I'll show to you. All right, there we go. This node right here. Marksman skills gain 30% increased projectile amount per agility orb. You get agility orbs here on killing an enemy or damaging an elite. You start with 3, so this is 90% projectiles, which is really good. There's a bunch of other really cool stuff here, like damage per agility orb, and also marksman skills deal 30% multiplicative to enemies that are far away, 100 base, tons of good stuff. TLDR, if you're playing a marksman skill, you probably want to come over here ASAP. So you fill this tree out. As you fill stuff out, more things unlock. There are a couple of other interesting systems that I want to quickly talk about that. The first is obtaining new constellation points. This is done via cleansing cursed shrines. You start encountering these in Act 2, and you'll continue to encounter them in Act 3, then the Abyss and Oblivion difficulties. As you cleanse a cursed shrine, you fight 3 waves of enemies, usually ending in a torrent of elites. After they're all dead, congratulations, you have 1 constellation point. The other important mechanic is the affinity system. So, all unique relics are associated with one of the paths. If this is your dominant path, i.e. you have a lot more devotion here than you do elsewhere, you're going to be getting more of those relics. So for example, I am playing Physical Split Shot. Blunderbuss is a discipline relic. Odds are most of the other relics I want are also going to be discipline. And so by ensuring that I have quite a few discipline constellations, I'm going to be getting more of the relics that I want and less of the relics that I don't want. After you complete the campaign, there are 2 types of endgame to experience. First up, you can continue your journey with Abyss, Oblivion, and Void. These game modes are an extension of your current character, so all of your upgrades, relics, etc., they carry over and you get to play through the campaign again. Abyss and Oblivion are both a step up from the campaign, but more than doable if you have a strong build, though you may need to spend a few runs grinding along the way. If you clear both, 1 last world tier remains, Void, an aspirational difficulty made to challenge all but the strongest builds. When it comes to Void, there are no additional rewards, only difficulty. Alternatively, Ascension is the game's roguelike mode, where you start fresh, and with each new run, you have 7 tries to beat the boss of each act, for a total of 21. Unused runs within an Ascension do carry over, so if you do well in Act 1, you'll have more tries for Acts 2 and 3. From my experience, Act 1 is the hardest, and it's actually in Act 2 where I get most of my runs that carry over to Act 3. Personally, I prefer Ascension, as I like making builds and working with what I get early in a run. But to challenge the endgame, you're going to need a build. And what does Hellclock have to offer there? Well, if you're watching this as it airs, I plan to release several build videos soon that are either going to be new builds or updates of things that I've talked about previously. So be sure to get subscribed and also check the video description to see if they're already there. If you want to get notified as soon as possible for new uploads, join my Discord, give yourself a notification role. That's also down below. But let's go over a couple of basics with these quick setups. Throughout the video, you've seen me use a physical split shot that is enabled by the Blunderbuss unique. Early on, you combine this with Spearhead to add pierces. This way you have the clear of normal split shot, but the damage from Blunderbuss. Once you reach Act 2, you can use Stolen Weapons to give your Summon the Guard minions the Blunderbuss effect. Congratulations, you now have a personal army. On the other hand, if you'd rather play Spin to Win, the ARPG classic, then you can go Double Knives. There are relics like Tempest to convert it to lightning, allowing you to scale the damage via movement speed, or Bloody Thorn to quickly stack bleeding effects on enemies. When you're trying to learn what's possible for builds in Hellcraft, look for a unique relic that synergizes with the main skill that you want to use. Then, add in supporting skills or relics to round out your damage, provide quality of life, such as clear speed and explosions, or of course improve your defenses. Remember what I said at the top, builds in Hellclock are always better if you add explosions. And when it comes to Buildcraft, there's 2 important things to keep in mind. First, resistances are crucial. You want to reach the 75% cap as soon as possible once you start progressing in Act 3, and you want to do your best to remain capped from then on. At first glance, being at 50% instead of 75 might not seem like a big deal. After all, you're still mitigating half the damage, right? Well, that would be the case if a developer was balancing the game around you having 0% resistance. But later portions of the game are balanced around you having that 75%. So, if the developers intend for you to take 1,000 physical damage, the enemy will deal 4,000. If you're at 50%, you take 2,000. That means you're taking double damage, not half. So pay close attention to your relics and be sure to cap those resistances. Second up, damage scaling is the difference between crushing everything and running out of time because the boss feels like it has infinite health. Your goal here is to stack as many different ways to scale your damage as possible. And I mean that beyond just the unique relics that enable your build. Start with a good amount of base damage. You can get this on your weapon, rings, and in a couple other sources. Then add increases. These are primarily found on relic primary affixes, which you can think of as prefixes. Then layer on multipliers from sources like rare relic affixes and constellations. Skill levels are powerful, but pretty rare. And last but not least, anything multiplicative. If you see an X instead of a plus, that's a good one to grab. Most of the other effects I talked about combine together additively, so the more of it you have, the less effective it is. But anything marked with an X is calculated separately. This is why the Kaipora constellation takes your bleeds from not really great, but okay, to totally insane. And so with that in mind, you should have everything you need to get started in Hellclock. If you're looking for something else to watch, keep an eye out for those build videos that should be in the description sometime soon. On the other hand, if you want to go over everything this video covers and more, check out the written version of this guide over at MaxwellGG. For now, thank you very much for watching to the end. If you enjoyed, do be sure to leave a like. And for now, I guess I'll see you in Hell, or maybe see you in Hellclock.